We've been able to move those trials into smaller communities in places where we actually can expand the reach of those trials and add more diverse populations into those trials, which again allows our customers to develop treatments that have a broad impact on what sometimes underrepresented groups.
Welcome to Science with a Twist, a podcast for curious people who enjoy exploring how science impacts our daily lives. From technology that helps the fight against COVID-19 to solutions that help clean the water we drink, it's all thanks to science. In each episode, members of Thermo Fisher Scientific's team talk to experts who are on the cutting edge of redefining how we exist. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to Science with a Twist, brought to you by Thermo Fisher Scientific, the world leader in serving science. I'm your host, Terri Somers. Today, our discussion about science and innovation will be a bit different. I'll be joined by two Thermo Fisher Scientific leaders who play key roles in sponsoring and overseeing many of the company's corporate social responsibility programs as we discuss the important topic of enabling health equity globally. Health equity is described as reaching a state in which everyone has a fair and just opportunity to reach their highest level of health. The topic is ingrained in Thermo Fisher's mission, which is to enable our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. It's embedded in our day-to-day business, and it's part of what drives our approach to develop new, innovative products and services. The world saw what the lack of health equity looked like during the global pandemic. For example, the COVID infection rate and deaths from the virus disproportionately impacted Black, Latinx, and Native American people. There was a shortage of crucial COVID tests and restrictions placed on testing, which all disproportionately impacted people of color. During today's podcast, we're going to explore Thermo Fisher's Healthier Communities Initiative, which encompasses corporate and colleague programs dedicated to increasing health equity. Thermo Fisher approaches this effort by applying its influence to support three key stakeholder groups: communities, patients, and customers. As the world leader in serving science with unmatched capabilities across a diverse integrated portfolio, Thermo Fisher is uniquely positioned to support customers, governments, and health organizations in addressing health inequities. Our company-wide efforts to advance health equity include making diagnostic tests more accessible, recruiting more diverse patients in clinical trials, and helping communities build their capacity to address disease. So to walk us through our discussion on health equity today, we are joined by Fred Lowery, Executive Vice President and President, Laboratory Products and Bioproduction, and Meron Mathias, Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability. Both of them play key roles in Thermo Fisher's Healthier Communities Initiative. Fred Lowery and Meron Mathias, welcome. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Hi, Terri.
Terri, how you doing? It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Fred and Meron, can you both talk about your roles at Thermo Fisher and your experience with programs of sustainable impact, including what first sparked your passion for health equity?
Yeah, I'll start. Well, I've been with the company for quite some time. I've been here for 19 years. It's been a fast but great 19 years with a lot of change and a lot of impact. I'm really drawn to the company's mission of enabling our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. And, I've been involved in many activities in the last 19 years that really makes a huge impact for our customers, and where our customers are more importantly, making a huge impact on the world. And that really is quite exciting, and it gets me up in the morning. And I think of health equity in a very broad sense, that almost everything that we do as a company in some ways impacts health equity. And so it's important that we are our best selves every day, and that the 120,000 plus colleagues at Thermo Fisher Scientific wake up every day thinking about how we can enable our customers. And that's part of the other thing that really makes this an exciting place, is the passion that our colleagues have around supporting our customers, because they know the impact that we have on society. So it's a pretty exciting place to work in that regard.
So for me, I've not been here as long as Fred. I'm working on that. I actually joined in the height of the pandemic. So Terri, your opening was kind of really interesting for me to reflect on. And it's always a little interesting for me to reflect on. In my current role, I basically get to work with experts all across our company to shape the way we think about not what we do, but how we do it. So we're continually striving to really raise the bar on what it means to do business the right way, and thinking about how we leverage our leadership for good. So it's taking our amazing mission and amplifying that, right? To combat climate change, to strengthen local communities, ensure the safety and quality of our products that ultimately serve patients and communities. So I feel very fortunate to do this work, and actually came into Thermo Fisher from kind of, I think, through a bit of a unique journey. I always had a passion for sciences and health. In a lot of ways, this role is a full circle moment for me because I started my career in the lab using Thermo Fisher technologies and equipment every day. And then when I was looking to apply that passion in a slightly different way, I ended up in nonprofit organizations and non-governmental organizations, or NGOs. And they really thought about health in a much more comprehensive way than I had ever thought about before. And it's through that work where I got to bring government and companies like Thermo Fisher and NGOs together to really drive societal change in a sustainable way that eventually led me to kind of tackling the problem from a different vantage point. And that's what brought me here to Thermo Fisher.
Well, when it comes to health equity, how does Thermo Fisher choose its areas of interest, investment, and support?
Yeah, so I'll take that. And by the way, I think Meron says she hasn't been here as long as me. I think she just said I was old, and she's not old. I think that's what she meant to say.
I said no such thing.
I did not hear that.
Right?
That's kind of how I heard it, but that's okay. No, when I think about the company's efforts and how do we make decisions around investment, it's a real broad-based approach here when you think about health equity. I mean, our mission is, again, to enable our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. So it's right in our mission as to what we do. So I think of it in the context of every dollar we invest in a business is a dollar that we're investing in making the world healthier, or at least enabling our customers to make the world healthier, which will ultimately drive health equity. But so when I think about the products, the services, the solutions that we provide, we are really enabling science. And that's a big enabler toward health equity. Some would say that it is the golden age of biology. I think we are seeing amazing scientific breakthroughs. And a lot of our products, services, and solutions are engaged in developing that. A few examples that come to mind for me in women's health, we just announced that we have a preeclampsia test, which is the first ever test for preeclampsia, which is a life-threatening condition that impacts women during pregnancy. And it just so happens to impact minority women at a much higher rate. So I think that's a great example where we've developed a test that really broad brush supports women, but obviously helps from a health equity standpoint. When I think about rare disease, many of our customers are focused on addressing or developing treatments for rare disease. And our portfolio in gene therapy helps to support customers that are focused in that area. And most recently, we've heard about the gene therapies that have been developed that support sickle cell anemia, which is a disease that impacts about 100,000 people in the United States today. And again, it just happens to really be focused more prevalent in the African-American community. So that's another example where I think, our broad-based support of customers actually impacts health equity. And then also, as many are aware, but, we're engaged with supporting customers that are developing vaccines, and that was still very prevalent during the pandemic, but just as a normal course of our business, we are very supportive of customers with our products and services in the bioproduction space, which is where vaccines are developed, whether it's flu vaccines or COVID or many, many other vaccines. So those are a few examples of how we prioritize our investments, but really how our products and services impact science broadly, but also from a health equity standpoint.
One thing that's really interesting when I hear Fred talk about sickle cell, I remember being in middle school, and I won't say the year, Fred, because I am old. So I remember being in middle school and going to school with a boy in my class who had sickle cell. He was in and out of class. And it was my first time, I think, sort of hearing about someone who had an illness where there really wasn't a lot that could be done for them. And as I got older, of course, I understood that much more directly through my own experiences and through the experiences of my friends. And so I came here in 2020. And a few years later, for this preeclampsia test to get FDA approval to be used in the United States, I thought, gosh, I have friends who have suffered from preeclampsia or who've had scares. And it just, I think over the over my life, right, and seeing how research is advancing and how more conditions, not just those that disproportionately impact African Americans, but that disproportionately impact these groups that have been underrepresented in research. I think it's been wonderful to be at this company at this time when a lot of this change is not just happening, but it's getting more visibility. Because I think with more visibility, other companies, right, want to take a role. Other organizations may want to play more of a leadership role. And I think together we can do a lot to make more change in a shorter period of time.
Meron, can you talk about how we leverage our what we call our pillars to make even further impact?
Sure. So in the opening of the call, you mentioned these sort of 3 stakeholder groups that we focus on. When we consider how we leverage our core capabilities to make an even further impact, if I take customers as the first example of these 3 groups, one of the ways we think about this is in terms of affordable and scalable health solutions that will allow our customers to reach as many people as possible, right? To really close those health gaps. And so this includes sort of how we can provide sustainable support in low and middle income countries. In terms of patients, there's so many ways that we support this, but one area that's coming into much sharper focus is really around advancing equity in clinical research. So, how do we advocate for more equitable protocols? How do we recruit more diverse patients into clinical trials, really thinking about the populations that have been understudied and, therefore don't have as many health solutions that are proven, right, to really support them and their needs. And then in terms of communities, really amplifying our local impact, whether it's through capacity building for community organizations, training for local scientists and researchers, or even, leveraging our workforce. Like Fred said, we have 120,000 colleagues who are really passionate about our mission, are really passionate about health equity. They can volunteer and contribute their talents in very different ways in local communities. And Thermo Fisher is great about really encouraging that. So leveraging our colleagues and their, desire to volunteer and give back in ways that really help to drive disease prevention and access to healthcare.
I'll just stay with the point on clinical trials. And I think it's a really good example of how we can influence health equity. One, our customers are asking for our help to help create more diverse participants in clinical trials. So we've taken that on. And if you think historically, oftentimes clinical trials have been done in academic research centers or in large cities or in places like that. And what we've been able to do is to move those trials into smaller communities in places where we actually can expand the reach of those trials and add more diverse populations into those trials, which again allows our customers to develop treatments that have a broad impact on what sometimes underrepresented groups historically haven't been able to participate in those types of trials.
Meron, can you talk a little bit more about how Thermo Fisher leverages its global footprint to improve health equity in communities?
Sure, yeah. So I'll stay with the point maybe on low and middle income countries, because I think there's sort of some interesting sort of synergies there, right? Just in 2022, this is a good example. We launched our HIV drug resistance genotyping kit, HIVDR for short, which I probably will use. But, this is part of our Global Access Program, which is a program that actually provides favorable pricing in certain low and middle income countries, which reduces, right, these barriers to access or works to reduce barriers to access. And so that was so important for this test because this test basically is a much more efficient way of determining the best course of treatment, HIV treatment for a patient. That's a process that could have taken a really long time, right, without this test. And so we co-developed this drug resistance test with the U.S. Center for Disease Control. But by enabling access to the kits, you take a place like Nigeria, for example, which currently accounts for nearly 2 million of the 39 million individuals across the world who have HIV. And so we can make this test more accessible in places like that, right? We can drive better outcomes and at younger ages. Last year on World AIDS Day in 2023, we announced a new partnership with an NGO called Project Hope. And so this really sort of ties in this focus of the HIV-DR test. That collaboration is focused in Nigeria and really working to improve the well-being and treatment outcomes for young people living with HIV in Nigeria, which, has the world's second largest HIV epidemic today. So I think there are the ways that our products come into play here. There are ways that our global access program come into play here, and how we can sort of layer on community partnerships and collaborations to take the work farther.
Fred, Meron just talked about the HIV test kits and our collaboration with others to make sure that that's the most effective program that we can provide. Can you talk a little bit more about how we collaborate with others to increase our impact?
Yeah, I mean, we very much is right in our mission about enabling our customers. And I think of us as an organization that's really focused on collaboration and with all stakeholders. I mean, we collaborate with our customers, but also our suppliers, oftentimes community organizations or research institutions, sometimes government agencies. And I think Mary mentioned some NGOs that we're collaborating with as well. But it's really about how do we increase our impact. A couple of examples that come to mind: back in 2023, we joined forces with one of our customers, Pfizer, to help increase access to next-gen sequencing-based testing for lung cancer and breast cancer patients in over 30 countries across Latin America, Middle East, and Africa and Asia, which is just an amazing program. But we also collaborate in other areas that are maybe not so much product related. A few years ago, we extended our impact by doing some impact investing with the Black Economic Development Fund. And the Black Economic Development Fund is focused on helping to build economic development in Black communities around the country. And one of the examples of some of their work is where they provided a loan to Dr. Maya Barfield, who's a veterinarian in Texas, and really allowed her to acquire an animal hospital business, which is awesome in and of itself. But when you think about the fact that less than 2% of veterinarians in the US are Black, it makes it even more impactful around what the Black Economic Development Fund is doing. So we're excited to be able to be a part of those types of efforts.
I know both of you have talked about how our corporate social performance is a key part of why you love working at Thermo Fisher. But how do these initiatives help draw in and engage new colleagues?
Yeah, I think our mission and our corporate social responsibility drives huge engagement from our colleagues. As a matter of fact, to the point that I've been surprised at how many colleagues have come up to me and said, "Hey, I saw where we did X, and it really made me feel great. I've never experienced more satisfaction from working for a company. And I'm so proud that we're doing whatever the thing might be." It reminds me of when we did the Just Project, launched the Just Project during COVID, which was an effort to provide COVID testing to historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs. And we did that by standing up 8 CLIA certified labs on HBCU campuses and creating the supply chain where over half of the HBCUs were able to receive test kits from us and send those test kits to the eight hub schools, if you will, or 8 labs, and get the results back in the next day. But it wasn't only colleagues, though. I mean, I was contacted at that time by parents going, "Thank you for helping my kids go back to school safely. And I'm really excited about what Thermo Fisher's doing." And frankly, I've met a lot of new colleagues who said, "Hey, because of that work, I learned about Thermo Fisher Scientific, and I wanted to be a part of a company like that. And that's why I work here now." So it drives tremendous engagement when we're able to leverage our capabilities to do good in the world and support our customers and our communities that we live and work in.
I remember interviewing for my job here. One of my very first conversations, right around the time the Just Project was actually launching. And so in our very first conversation, I got into this discussion where I thought, this is remarkable because nobody was doing anything like that right at that time. So certainly, had an influence on me coming to the company. And like Fred, I've gotten lots of feedback from folks on different initiatives that have just spoken to them in different ways.
I think.
I was just going to comment and say that it's one of the things today that job seekers look for, right? They want to understand what the position is that they're applying for, but the kind of traffic we get on any social media post or parts of our website that highlight this work and how we think about this work, heavily trafficked pages and content. Go ahead, Fred.
No apologies. One of the things that I would say about the culture of the company, which I think is important, is that we're not doing it for the hype. We really are not. We're really focused on impact, focusing on enabling impact. We feel like we have a huge responsibility and a huge set of tools and products and solutions that can make a difference. And we're really focused on making a difference. And that to me is one of the most exciting things about the company is that we really are trying to use the products that we have for good. And when I think about it, it reminds me of, what George Sestopoulos said, who was the founder of Thermoelectron. And his goal was to use technology to solve some of the world's biggest problems. And we have stayed true to that all these many years later as Thermo Fisher Scientific. So that's really exciting to me.
And I love that point about the culture. So a great example is we have really strengthened over the course of the last few years our collaborations with historically Black colleges and universities. But when you think about how people have then just personally wanted to contribute to making those collaborations even stronger, our cybersecurity team is a great example of this. So we as a company have another community focus on STEM education, right? Science, technology, engineering, math. How do we get more students exposed to it earlier? How do we get a more diverse set of students exposed to it earlier? And so we have a cybersecurity team who said, we really want to help highlight the T in STEM, right? Technology, and collaborated with a couple of our HBCUs and custom designed hackathon challenges and like interactive forensic activities, things way above what I could explain to you today, but really like using our technologies to take those into the universities and work with the students and give them this real world application of what they're learning in the classroom. And that was very much self-motivated. That wasn't something somebody assigned them to go do, right? This was something they really sort of brought together. They invested time in developing these initiatives. And now those are scalable programs. We can take them to other universities. We can adapt them and use them at different age ranges for our STEM education programming. I think this really speaks to how the passion of our colleagues, the enabling culture we have to really support that type of engagement in communities, but also just like the endless opportunity to use skills and talents to give back.
Meron, you just mentioned STEM, and I know that Thermo Fisher has a very deep commitment to STEM programs. Can you talk about those and how they may contribute to healthier communities?
Absolutely. When we think about the workforce in the life sciences space, and we think about what we need to do more, to do better for society and really achieve our mission, fulfill our mission, it's really about driving innovation. And we know that the more you can have diverse perspectives around the table, the more you can have, right, one form of thinking challenging another form of thinking, you really can drive innovation. And so for us, there is this commitment to bringing more talent, more minds, more diversity, different types of lived experiences into the life sciences space. There are, certain populations that are really underrepresented in this sector. And we want to use our STEM education programs to make sure that students at a very early age, as early as middle school, really get exposed to different types of opportunities to work in these fields. You may grow up and your only touch point with somebody in STEM might be, a doctor, if you're lucky enough to go to a doctor. And so that may be your only understanding of what it means to work in the sciences, but there's so many applications, right? For science, technology, engineering, math. And so it's really about exposing those students early, exposing them to all the different possibilities and working through our colleagues to engage students in actual hands-on, right, activities that help to bring that to life in a way that they can understand depending on where they are in their academic journey. And so in addition to collaborations with schools, we have a national partnership in the United States with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and that really helps us to reach, more of those student populations that are still underrepresented in life sciences today. We also really believe in science competitions. How do you really raise the bar? How do you get students thinking about research very early? And so the Thermo Fisher Scientific Junior Innovators Challenge was just launched last year. It's a mouthful, I know. But the Junior Innovators Challenge is great, right? It reaches over 60,000 students across the United States and ultimately results in top 300 junior innovators that get narrowed down to a top 30 that engage in these collaborative challenges and, kind of ultimately are competing for that top spot based on research that starts at a school science fair. I mean, so we're really talking about how do we reach students in a lot of different ways to expose them to all of the potential of this space so that any student who wants to pursue a career or an academic journey in the sciences not just knows what that means, but really has the opportunity to do so.
And Fred, Meron's talking about reaching out to students. We have some programs. I've heard about one that we have in South Africa that seeks to bring in a more diverse population into medical research.
I'm very excited about the program that we have in South Africa with the South African Medical Research Council, where we noticed that there are great researchers, great scientists in Africa, but what we noticed is oftentimes there's a lack of hands-on experience with some of our equipment and some of the instrumentation. And so we focused this program around molecular biology, and we're going to build out a lab or a center of excellence and a training program in South Africa, really focus on providing hands-on experience in the lab with our instrumentation. But we're not going to stop there. We're not going to just provide hands-on lab experience. We're also going to help train around bioinformatics, around lab management, around the financial processes it takes to run a lab, and some of the softer skills, some of the softer leadership skills and driving continuous improvement. And our goal here is to train over 5,000 scientists across the continent in 50 different countries over the next 5 years. The first lab, the construction will start later this year in September, and hope to be up and running in 2025.
And Africa is incredibly diverse. Like, I think that's important to call out here, because when you think about whether it's an initiative like the Junior Innovators Challenge, or it's something, significantly more robust, like what Fred is talking about with this medical research center, the reality is when you have more people who are from a broader set of communities, challenges that those communities face get elevated faster. They get investigated and researched sooner. And so I think the example that Fred gave at the top of the call around sickle cell, again, like a great example, that garnered, right, over time, that has garnered more visibility and awareness and has gotten us to where we are today. But the idea would be that if you have more people around the table, these things don't take as long. They get prioritized, they get funded. And so that's how it all comes back around to advancing healthier communities and really advancing health equity. And that's why it's so critical to keep this dual focus on how do we invest in closing those health disparities and health gaps, and also continue to build a future workforce in this space that's going to prioritize that.
Thermo Fisher just recently released its corporate social responsibility report, and it appears that having a desire to make a difference and positively impact communities and the world at large is something shared by many of Thermo Fisher's 120,000 global employees. Would you both agree?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about what our employees are, the individual contributions, volunteering their time and through donations, how they've made a difference?
Yeah, and we have partnerships all over the world. I mean, generally enabled by our community action councils, and they're very focused locally on what the demands are locally, whether it's in Australia, where we packed over 1,500 home birth kits, which have been distributed to mothers in Africa, and through other nonprofit partners, the Birthing Kit Foundation being one of them, whether it's our partnership with Clean the World, where we've packed hygiene kits and donated it to local homeless populations and women's shelters in the U.S. But, I could talk about many, many different things, and they really are global, but they're very focused on what the local needs are. The German organization has focused on the hand project, where our colleagues have built over a dozen prosthetic hands that are fitted to those in need in both Africa and India. And what's interesting is when our colleagues are focused on things that are locally important, it's not so different depending on where you are in the world. I mean, whether it's in Japan or the U.S., where we're both focused on supporting the Ronald McDonald houses to provide meals to families that are traveling to receive health care. It's just really exciting to see our colleagues spending their time and energy to make a difference in their local communities.
It would be great to wrap up today with a preview of what's to come. So what else is Thermo Fisher already working on? And what do we see as opportunities globally where we can have a real impact to drive health equity and healthier communities?
Well, Terri, there are some things we're working on that I can't quite talk about yet, that I'm super super excited about. So I'm going to talk about the things that are announced, but there's certainly more to come. Our colleagues, and that's both from a corporate social responsibility standpoint, from a health equity standpoint, but also just from the products and services and solutions that we're working on every single day. Really exciting stuff that the teams are working on. But one example of something that has been announced that is relatively new and we're developing is the National Minority Quality Forum. And this really was established to help build and expand the capacity in U.S. communities and health clinics to participate in clinical trials and clinical research to historically underserved populations. So we're really in the early days of developing that, but super exciting work going on in that there. And then we're working with some collaborators around training and making sure that we're training the next generation of doctors and their researchers to help them have more diverse clinical trials in the future. And right now we've worked with Morehouse School of Medicine and Stanford University, to name just a few. And that network of people that we're going to work with in that regard is expanding. So those are a couple of programs that are relatively new, that are still in the growth phase, but there's many more things behind it that I'm super excited about, continue to have a huge impact in the world.
And those are perfect initiatives, I think, as part of our wrap up today. So thanks for that, Fred. Really reinforces, I think, how we are not just thinking about this work, but just again, right, how we're advancing the mission and really looking to push ourselves to do that in new ways and different ways and really make progress and really make an impact.
And Meron, if people want to learn more about the programs we talked about today and other initiatives, they can visit the thermofisher.com CSR to see the corporate social responsibility report, correct?
They can, and there's lots of great content there within the report, as well as on the website and on our YouTube channel as well.
Well, Fred and Meron, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Terri.
Thanks, Terri.
Fred.
Thanks, Meron.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Science with a Twist. This show is brought to you by Thermo Fisher Scientific, the world leader in serving science. If you enjoyed this episode, then follow Science with a Twist wherever you get your favorite podcasts.